Welcome in to Check the Mic. Steve Palazzolo and Sam Monson. We're live on our Wednesday edition here. A monster Wednesday, Sam, as always.
Indeed. And a very sad day.
It is. Okay, well, just get it out of the way at the top here. I'm sure you noticed right off the top, everybody. We are
In mourning
for
the ACL of Dennis the Barbarian Gardeck.
Yeah, the black bands are out in honor of Check the Mic favorite Dennis the Barbarian Gardeck, who tore his ACL on Monday night.
He did.
Moment of silence.
And there we go.
That's it. So are we rocking these for the rest of the year or just paying our respects right now?
I think just today is appropriate.
So if I have to leave this here and put it on might be a lot. But
yeah. No, I think just today. Give him his due respect, and then we move on.
Will he be back? Is he going to be back in time for preseason so we can hear Jesse the Body call his name?
Yes. I'm going to make it my mission now to go find a really clean clip of Jesse the Body Ventura saying, "The Barbarian."
Now, Ron Wolfley, the guy that speaks like Jesse the Body, I've done every preseason. This is what happens. Like, you get 3 plays into the preseason. I'm like, well, I'm sick of this game. I'm going to go search Ron Wolfley clips of him saying the Barbarian. And it's terrible. Like, he's interviewed the Barbarian before and respectfully called him Dennis. And I'm just like, come on, man. You call him the Barbarian to his face so that I can clip it and use it, and I couldn't even find it.
It's crazy. It has to exist somewhere. Maybe Arizona fans can help us out with that.
We have incredible researchers as viewers and listeners here.
Yeah.
Some of the emails that we've seen come through, including one this week that some guy, I don't want to name his name.
You can name his name.
I don't, because he was at work. He was at work.
Oh, okay.
He was at work
doing
research.
Yeah.
And his boss probably listens.
Maybe.
As well. So we don't want that.
Okay.
My computer's
playing the show.
We're going live. I'm on delay over here. Drew in the chat said, what are the armbands for? Drew actually noticed them on my Navy. The armband is for Dennis the Barbarian Gardeck.
Yeah.
We're honoring his service to football and the fact that he has torn his ACL.
Correct.
And is out for the season.
Mm-hmm.
So we already had a moment of silence, Drew. If you could just jump in and do one on your own, that'd be great. All right. Got no more use for this bit. Just kidding. Barbarian, we love you. The whole thing's powered by PrizePicks today. Appreciate PrizePicks for powering every single show. You can download the PrizePicks app today. Use the code CheckTheMic. Get $50 instantly when you play $5. I will have my lineup unveiled later today. There's one outstanding projection. Real excited about. Outstanding projection. That I'm looking forward to putting into the lineup this week. So we'll be doing that a little bit later. First off, we're going to start with Monday Night Football. There's breaking news. Here's what's happening on the show today. Hopkins has been traded to the Kansas City Chiefs. That's huge news. There's Cooper Kupp trade interest. We have the great Rick Spielman, former Minnesota Vikings general manager. Always love having Rick on the show. Top 20 guest in the history of our show, I would say. And I'm going to introduce him as such. Really a lot of respect for Rick. He'll be in here talking. He knows the Lions inside and out. His brother's in there with the Lions,
right.
Chris
Spielman.
So we're going to be talking Lions team building, what it's like at the trade deadline, what GMs are doing, what are these conversations like. We'll talk a little Marvin Harrison Jr. And his favorite quarterback in the draft over the last couple of years, ask him some questions about that. So we've got all sorts of fun stuff here. We've got the Shouty Shows coming up. But let's start with Monday Night Football. It was a doubleheader on Monday night. We saw the Baltimore Ravens defeat the Tampa Bay Bucks by a score of 41 to 31, and then the Cardinals in the second half of the doubleheader win 17-15. Let's start Ravens-Bucks, Sam. Ravens moved to 5-2 with this win. Bucks fall to 4-3. Biggest news was Chris Godwin getting injured with under a minute left in the 10-point game, out for the season with a dislocated ankle. And Lamar Jackson outstanding in this game, one of his best games ever.
Yeah, not just Chris Godwin, but Mike Evans with a hamstring injury as well that he was already nursing going into the game. And it's funny how often in the NFL, like, the score really doesn't bear an awful lot of resemblance to the game, right? Like,
don't make me guess.
No,
don't make me guess a game score.
I'm not even looking that up.
Hold on, really quick. For the people that missed it,
yeah,
I guessed Kev Cole's projected game score the other day for the Jets Steelers. I did it again last night.
You have this freakish ability to just guess numbers.
Yeah. So Harry was watching the Celtics.
Yeah.
Right. And I knew what happened in the beginning. I knew Jason Tatum had 15 points in the first quarter and a half or something like that. Right. But later in the night, I'm doing something else. Harry comes up. He goes, "Daddy, do you know how many points Jason Tatum has?" I looked at him and I said, 37. And he goes, "How did you know that?" Did it again.
It's happened too many times now for it to just be like random chance. There's something freaky attached to your ability to just guess a random number.
Mental math. I just did really quick. It was like quarter. He had 15 already. Read the tone of Harry's voice. It's got to be something like, I wouldn't say 19. He wouldn't come asking.
It could always be one or the other.
You got to know it's in the 30s.
It could always be one or the other, you know? And you always nail it. Exactly. It's stupid. It has to be like, we should be able to capitalize on that and make money from it. And we haven't figured out how to.
All right, well, you guys, let me know
anyway
if you can figure that out. All right, back to Ravens-Bucks.
So this game, it started off, and like the Bucks were, Baker Mayfield and the Bucks were absolutely in the groove. They should have scored a touchdown on like 3 straight drives, and they were looking great. And then once they made one mistake on offense, Baker Mayfield like collapsed. And from that point on, it was an absolute beatdown from the Ravens, who just destroyed them for the majority of the game until late on you get the kind of garbage time comeback that ends up never really getting that close, but makes the score a much closer affair than it actually ended up being. So at no point did the score reflect accurately really what this game was, except that sort of brief period before Tampa Bay started the comeback when they had just been smacked down for a while.
It was 10-0 Bucks, right? They were up, like you said. Mike Evans has a ball hit his hands in the end zone as his hamstring injury occurs, so he drops it.
Well, so Baker, opening drive, like looks smooth, in rhythm, in the groove, like feeling it, touchdown, boom. Bucks offense is in rhythm. The next drive they have, or their defense then absolutely swarms all over the Ravens offense. They get them in like second and long, 2 straight sacks, like they get them off the field. Second drive, pass to Mike Evans in the back of the end zone. You're right. Mike Evans, who they were saying like he'd been coming into this game nursing a hamstring injury. They're gonna give him a go and sort of see if he can just get by. And then like at full stretch in the back of the end zone where Baker Mayfield puts the ball in his hands, like perfect throw. And you could see Mike Evans' brain, like the reactive part, the lizard brain part that's not connected to conscious thought, is like, the hamstring just went again, immediately abandoned like motor control for catching a football, almost just like threw it away. And then like hamstring's gone. Mike Evans is sort of...
After he was already hobbling.
That's what I'm saying.
Earlier in the game.
He's now
we
like
knew he was
done.
On the injury report, right? You know.
Yeah, so he was on the injury report with the hamstring. Really early, he caught a pass, and then at that point he's like limping around. And then they still have him out there like, let's make it really stretch the hamstring in the back of the end zone for a touchdown. Twang, and now he's going to be gone for like 4 or 5 weeks. But that should have been the second touchdown. And then the third one, they're in the red zone as well. Baker Mayfield tries to force one, doesn't really see Marlon Humphrey, who drops off his guy, picks off the pass, and that really started the complete collapse from the Bucks. But they should have been 21 points to the good after the first few drives.
So by the way, that's the second time this week where a receiver was on the injury report with a hamstring and then kind of taken off the injury report. It's like, we thought Mike Evans had a hamstring. Nah, he's good to go. We found out 2 days before. And then gets injured during the game. Juju Smith-Schuster of the Chiefs, same thing happened. We know how tricky hamstrings are. The report now is that Evans isn't going to be available till maybe week 11 or 12, or their week 11 bye, after their bye, basically, in a few weeks. So no IR stint necessarily, but he's out for a while. And then the Chris Godwin injury, before we talk, I want to rave about the Ravens too and how good they are.
Yeah.
But the Chris Godwin injury occurs. It's a 10-point game. Tampa Bay had already scored a touchdown. They recovered an onside kick. I guess there was some misinformation floating around the internet, which is a shocking turn of events, that you have a limit on how many onside kicks you can attempt during a game. That's not true.
Yeah.
Google's AI was wrong apparently, which
really?
Again, a shocking turn of events. The AI is not ready to take over yet, Sam. It doesn't even know the rules of football yet. We're safe.
Yeah, it needs to be fed correct information.
At least another 6 months here. So the Bucs still technically had a chance, but we're talking 99.9% win probability for the Ravens. There's under a minute left, and Chris Godwin, they're investigating the Roquan Smith tackle as a hip drop, dislocated ankle, and of course Godwin will be out for the season. So in one game, the Bucs, who came in first place in the NFC South, are dealing with injuries to their 2 awesome receivers. And again, Evans has always been very good and consistent, but Godwin in particular this year looks like he did 3 or 4 years ago. Just an unfortunate injury, especially given the timing.
Yeah, before he'd battled back from all the injuries. I mean, Godwin's dealt with a lot of injuries already. There was that clip going around where he's sitting on the cart, with the leg in the air cast being stretched off, knowing obviously that he's his leg's wrecked again, and he's just sort of back to work. Let's go. Got to get back to work now. Like, the poor guy is just going into another long grind of rehab to get his leg back to where it needs to be. It's such a shame for him. I don't know that there's anything they could have done about it. Like, theoretically, the game's still alive. I mean, we know practically it's not, but you can't just give up on it. You can't just send the backups out. Like, once they got
the whole bench, the starters thing in general. Like, if Tristan Wirfs, if it had happened to him, are we saying the same thing? Why is Tristan Wirfs in the game? Like, you can't literally bench every single starter.
So I think if they hadn't got the first onside, you could have just pulled the starters and said the game's done. But once they got that first onside kick and got it back to that, it's like, now we actually have to chase this in what is practically a non-achievable comeback, but is still theoretically alive. So they had to kind of keep
Mike
going.
Evans already out of the game too.
Yeah, and that's where it becomes a real problem, because suddenly you come out of this game with your top 2 wide receivers down, and now your receiving core is Trey Palmer and Jalen McMillan, the rookie, and Sterling Shepard, whose only career has been resuscitated because he's Baker Mayfield's college teammate, and Baker's found a role for him in Tampa Bay. But suddenly what was like a really good, useful receiving core has just been decimated by the top 2 guys getting hurt.
Then from a Baltimore perspective, we got another Lamar. The Lamar game, it's a trademark. 17 of 22 for 281, 5 touchdowns, no picks, 5 incompletions, 5 touchdowns, having 5 touchdowns on only 22 attempts. These are the types of stat lines that Lamar Jackson has, I don't want to say put out there on the regular, but way more regular than anyone else. The uber efficient game, I mean, I guess it is way more. There have been 3 games in NFL history where QB's thrown 5+ touchdown passes on fewer than 25 pass attempts, while also rushing for 50+ yards, all 3 by Lamar Jackson. 2 of them came in his first MVP season in 2019, and then Monday night against the Bucs from Opta Stats. So this is the trademark Lamar game. And then the other piece of this is you get into the late third quarter, and the Ravens are up by 3 scores, and you're like, hey, Derrick Henry only has 5 carries. Let's get him involved. And then they get him on the edge, 81-yard run, and he ends up finishing with 15 carries for 169. So Derrick Henry now finding his groove in this offense, creating those big plays on the ground, and becoming the closer that fits well with Baltimore's offense.
Yeah, 146 yards in the second half for Derrick Henry. And as much as it's he's big and strong and powerful, et cetera, it's his ability to actually make people miss and outrun them that is consistently why he's amazing. Obviously his power is, but on that big run, he made Antoine Winfield Jr. Miss the tackle on the edge without touching him. His cut. But you would imagine, okay, Antoine Winfield Jr., a small, undersized safety.
Yeah, it's not just running through
coming
him
up to try and tackle Derrick Henry. You can imagine a world where he gets stiff-armed into oblivion or just falls off the tackle. But Henry cut past Winfield, and he didn't touch him. His cut was able to make him miss the tackle without even forcing any contact, and then he outran everybody except Zion McCollum, who runs a 4.27 40 or whatever, is the only guy that can chase him down. Derrick Henry, for as huge and strong and powerful and wearing as he can be on a defense, he's also just freaking incredibly fast and able to make moves that make people miss as well. He's just a really difficult running back to stop in all areas.
We're in an interesting world right now where Saquon Barkley's having a lot of success with the Eagles and Henry with the Ravens. And, I think Giants fans are like, man, we let Saquon walk and he ran all over us. It's yeah, he went to a better team in a better situation with a better offensive line, and that's why he averages 5.5 per carry. Derrick Henry is probably the one running back that's been consistently elevating his offense, consistently defying the odds because of everything, because of the lack of injuries, because of his age, because of his size and big playability as a speed back as well as a power back. And then he went to the best situation of his career with the Ravens, and we're starting to see it. We had concerns after week 1 and 2 because they weren't using him the right way, but he also builds up, right? It takes a couple weeks sometimes to get there. So the Ravens looking extremely dangerous, Lamar looking great, and they get the win 41-31 over the Bucs. Just to touch on the other game briefly, I want to talk about Nuke Hopkins a little bit more than this, but Arizona Cardinals 17-15 win over the Chargers. Cardinals move to 3-4. On the other side, Justin Herbert with his biggest game of the year, 27 of 39 for 349. but no touchdowns, no interceptions. They didn't even get into the end zone. 5 field goals for the Chargers here on Herbert's best game.
Yeah, well, Arizona's defense forced them to be one-dimensional in the dimension they don't want to be. Like they stopped the run. I mean, J.K. Dobbins had 40 yards on 14 attempts, so 2.9 yards per carry. The Chargers as a team rushed for 2.7 yards per carry, most of which came after contact. Arizona's defense just said, no, we're not letting you run all over us. You're going to have to pass the ball to win. Obviously, they've got Justin Herbert, so you would imagine that's okay. We can make that work. Herbert had a ton of yardage, but it wasn't rewarded with points necessarily. They had to keep settling for field goals. They would have maybe got a touchdown if it wasn't for the walking wide receiver meme that is Jalen Reagor managing to fumble the ball into the end zone, and therefore touchback, turnover.
Somehow, I mean, not that anybody cares, but somehow you and I both typed dude, comma, Jalen Reagor at the exact same time as that happened, because he's just, since he's entered the league, had a knack for run the wrong route, becomes a pick, finally makes the catch, fumble, gets wide open down the field, drop. Like just all the negative plays that receivers can come up with, Reagor always seems to be in the middle of it.
He genuinely is like he's creating a teaching tape of all the different ways a wide receiver can cause a terrible play by the offense, right? And his always seem to end up in catastrophic turnover. There's another receiver in the NFL that I won't throw under the bus this week. We'll wait until he does something wrong again, where he just always seems to be at the center of a bad play, right? I'm not even sure it's necessarily his fault, but he's just always connected somehow, right? It's a target that went his way, or
I'm wondering now.
He's just in the area. Anyway, but it's not obvious that he's the exact root cause of every one of these plays. And to his credit, not every one of those plays is like a turnover. It's just like a drop pass or a freaky bounce or whatever, right? Every time Reagor does something wrong, it's like, oh, dude, you turned a touchdown into a fumble into the end zone, or you turned what could have been a deep touchdown pass into an interception because you ran the wrong direction at the end of the stem. Like, it's amazing what he does.
So the real difference in this game, Kyler Murray, 44-yard scamper. It's a scamper when he runs. 44 yards where he just outruns the defense for a touchdown. Ends up being the biggest play in the game. And, Arizona gets the walk-off field goal. There were some questions about the unnecessary roughness call on Marvin Harrison Jr. along the sideline. Kyler hits James Conner on a 33-yarder to get them into field goal range. And then, another key point was the Cardinals picking up a first down. They did run the ball well with James Conner against a good Chargers defense. And so they picked up the first down to essentially set it up so that they could run out the clock, kick the game-winning field goal. We reported on it live. We were live on the air as this was going down, passing it along to our listeners. And so the Cardinals get the win, 17-15. Chargers fall to 3-3. Cardinals 3-4 now.
Mm-hmm.
All right, you want to talk Nuke Hopkins?
Yeah.
He's been traded to the Kansas City Chiefs for a 5th-round pick that could become a 4th. Now the 3rd big-name receiver traded in 2 weeks here. Amari Cooper to the Bills, Devontae Adams to the Jets, and now DeAndre Hopkins to the Chiefs from the Tennessee Titans. Titans, of course, already falling out of contention here as we head into Week 8 of the NFL. And the Chiefs with injuries to Rashee Rice, Pacheco in the backfield, but Juju Smith-Schuster right now at receiver, and really continuing to have the worst passing attack they've ever had under Patrick Mahomes, just like last year, needed to make a move.
Yeah, and they made a move at a position that makes sense in terms of the specific wide receiver they're looking for, right? They lose Hollywood Brown before the season. They lose Rashee Rice, obviously, for the year with that knee injury. They then lose Juju Smith-Schuster for a period with a hamstring, I think his is. So they're down that move the chains slot receiver. And that sounds like what they want to do with Nuke Hopkins, which makes a ton of sense because I think that's basically what he's best positioned to do now. I still think he's capable of having that kind of Rashee Rice, Juju Smith-Schuster type of impact in that offense, being the chain mover. Like, you watch his tape now, he can still definitely play. I think when he was traded to Tennessee, you watched his tape and you're like, he's a really good receiver. The only thing that's missing now is the ability to kind of scare anybody deep, right? He doesn't have that over-the-top type of speed. Now, he can still win jump passes deep, and he can still, win against deep coverage, but he's not going to separate running those deep vertical route patterns. Now, that's still gone. I think he's also lost some explosion off the line. Like, you watch him, just his release is not as potent as it used to be. So it's more of a kind of build up off the line, but he still understands where to go, how to exploit zone coverage, still can separate against man coverage at the top of the stem. When he's making his break, he can still separate and get open. So I think it's a really good move for Kansas City. Plus, it didn't cost them much. Right. Tennessee's eating some of his salary. Like the other parts of it, it's a cheap deal. And I think for a player that makes a ton of sense given what they're missing. Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, the Chiefs are 6-0. Saw people talking about it this week. What a fascinating offense they have. The success rate stat. For those who aren't familiar, essentially, if you get 5 yards on 1st and 10, it's considered a successful play. And so that stat is just the percentage of plays that are successful. 5 yards on 1st down, half of what you need on 2nd down, and then converting on 3rd or 4th down are all considered successful plays by most accounts in the success rate formula. Well, the Chiefs have one of the best in the league. And if you're watching them, you kind of feel that, right? 5-yard runs here and there, little 5 yards, 8-yard screens, dump offs, underneath passes. They are very much staying on schedule. And even Brady did their game on Sunday, and that's what he kept talking about. He's like, they just don't have negative plays. If they run the ball, it's for 3. They don't have a lot of negative 2-yard runs. Mahomes doesn't take a lot of sacks. So they just keep moving forward. But clearly there's an explosive element in this offense that's been missing, not just this year, but last year as well. They found it, of course, in the playoffs, or they had enough of it in the playoffs to make that run. But some sort of downfield element. And that doesn't have to be 40 yards. But now you have DeAndre Hopkins, who I think can win in the 10 to 20-yard range pretty well, at least win in that intermediate range. Travis Kelce can still get open. He's not as explosive as he was before. I think even after he gets open, he's not going to create massive plays after the catch as much as he used to. But I think you've got 2 savvy veterans in Kelce and Hopkins who can get open or at least create enough separation. I don't know how Hopkins does in all of the separation numbers. Probably not great, but he knows how to separate late to catch the ball, which is most important. And then that opens up things for Xavier Worthy. We just saw Xavier Worthy wide open behind the defense on Sunday. Mahomes missed him. I think there'll be more opportunities for Worthy to just do that, right? To just get open down the field and create some of those 50, 60-yarders that the offense has been missing. So yeah, it's slightly awkward because they do still need that vertical threat, and that obviously has to be Xavier Worthy given the skill set of everybody involved. And you kind of need to manufacture those vertical shots from Xavier Worthy. Like lining him up just on the outside as an X receiver against press coverage. We saw Cam Taylor-Britt and the Bengals. You can kind of take that away. You need to get him the free release. You need to figure out how to get him running before anybody gets a chance to get their hands on him and neutralize his speed. So now you're in this world where you've got to sort of make that work along with lining up your other high-end players as slot weapons. Like Travis Kelce is effectively a slot weapon. Nuke Hopkins is going to take that Rashee Rice, Juju Smith-Schuster role in the slot, and the vertical threats need to come from the slot. So you're almost in this Buffalo world where nobody belongs outside, right? And you're going to have to sort of figure out how to make that work with stacked formations or bunches or switch releases or whatever it is. It's a little bit more awkward than ideal, but the pieces are there for it to all function.
And for DeAndre Hopkins, I'm just looking at deep passes here. Will Levis, 5 of 15 on 20-plus yard throws, while Patrick Mahomes, 5 of 13. So you go into a better quarterback situation by a couple passes here. Good move by the Chiefs, I think, to add Nuke Hopkins to the mix. And I think he still has enough left to improve their offense. Yeah,
and the alternative option, people were talking about Cooper Kupp, who's theoretically on the trade block at the moment.
Dynamite segue.
And the Chiefs apparently were interested, were kicking the tires. Kupp's just much more expensive, probably in both ways, like draft or compensation, draft picks, and the contract that they would have to pick up. And the Rams, I don't think, are particularly keen on eating a ton of that money the way Tennessee were supposedly willing to do for Hopkins. So it's just more expensive in every way. Like, would Kansas City have preferred Cooper Kupp over Nuke Hopkins in a vacuum if it was just, would you like one of these two players? Yeah, I would think so. But it's going to be more costly in every capacity, so they don't want it.
And two different types of players, obviously. Nuke Hopkins now the outside winner. I mean, if teams play man coverage against the Chiefs, it takes pressure off Andy Reid, the play caller, and it's like, hey, we could just throw one up to Nuke when they play man. And you mentioned he knows how to get open against zone, but he's going to do it more on the outside. Kupp is going to do that in the middle of the field.
Yep.
Now, where else can Cooper Kupp go? I heard it. So you had a theory on DeAndre Hopkins a couple years ago that the Panthers, who were not contenders, should have traded for him. I've seen, I follow a lot of Patriots beat writers and everything. I've seen them bring up Cooper Kupp. It would be the same idea, right? Like you'd be paying for a guy that's just there to help Drake May's development. Would a team that's not in contention like New England actually want to do that just to help Drake May? With somebody that can actually get open and catch the ball that they don't have.
Maybe. It feels like they're so deep into this sort of full rebuild at this point that I just don't know if they're going to go into that. But I would wonder maybe in the same idea, they don't need to help them. They're not as desperate for the additions. But does a team like Washington look at that and say, that would help turbocharge the Jaden Daniels? Like maybe almost like what Houston did this offseason. Like, why wait? We're good now. Let's go.
Yeah, that would be a real interesting one. I mean, Washington, I think, has defied the odds a little bit because they didn't look like they had a great offensive line. They didn't look like they had great anything, but the offense is unbelievable right now. And I think having the ability to have Terry McLaurin on the outside and Cooper Kupp just open all day. The injury risk, though, is a factor as well. Are you trying to get me to Rick?
Yeah, a little bit.
He's early.
He is. Having said that, he's early and ready.
I mean, that's fine. He can wait, man. I've got a schedule just because he's on Coughlin time here. I'm not going to change my schedule just because Rick's on early.
That's fine. You do what you want.
Do you have anything else to add to this Cooper Kupp discussion? We're going to cut the Cooper Kupp discussion.
I already pitched. I pitched Washington as my destination.
That's a good one. All right. Well, now I'm just going to have to call an audible here and tell everybody this month's about gratitude, Sam. We're going to be all thankful here this month. And I'm thankful for my family, my kids, the ability to just be around them, hang out with them every day. So,
and Rick being early.
I'm thankful for Rick, that he's not late all the time. So sometimes it's hard to remind ourselves that we're always trying our best to make sense of everything. And in this crazy world, that isn't easy. So here's a reminder to send some thanks to the people in your life, including yourself. And so that's where BetterHelp can come in. And, if this is something you've been thinking about doing, maybe getting help, talking to somebody, BetterHelp can help. It's helpful for learning positive coping skills, how to set boundaries, empowers you to be the best version of yourself. And it isn't just for those who have experienced major trauma. This could be for anybody. And if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire. You get matched with a licensed therapist, and then you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So the convenience is really unbelievable here from BetterHelp. So let the gratitude flow with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/checkthemic today. You get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/checkthemic. Do you have anything to add?
No, it's a great company that we can't recommend highly enough, given the work they're doing, given the ease of getting access to this kind of help. I think is a really important thing.
All right, let's get Rick in here. Now it's officially 2 minutes early. Wonder if Rick's ever been late to a meeting. What's up, Rick? How you doing, man? You're off mute. You're ready to go. What a pro.
Yeah, I've been sitting here since 9 waiting for the show, so I don't know what takes so long to get on. I mean, you guys, you have to get prepared for the show. You have to get the energy going for the show. So you don't just step on in 2 minutes before you go on the air to do all this prep work. So it was nice to hear some of your conversations on some of the outrageous ideas that you guys had on some of these trades. But look forward. It took me, 7 weeks into the season before you actually invited me on the show. Incredible.
I mentioned at the top of the show, I mean, you're a top 20 guest we've ever had. Top 20, Am
I making a college playoffs or not? Right now,
we'll see what the committee says, Rick. We will see. Feel free to correct any analysis we had on DeAndre Hopkins, fits for Cooper Kupp. Is there anything that comes to mind?
No, I mean, you guys did make some, actually. I think the D-Hop trade to Kansas City was an excellent move. The one thing that you talked about a little bit was not only the draft compensation, but how much money is the team that is trading the player willing to take on. So a team that's acquiring that player. And I've been in situations where, hey, we'll even give you maybe just a tad higher draft pick if you eat the rest of this guy's salary, because we can't fit it in and we don't want to take the any more cash into our budget. So you take the whole salary and maybe we'll bump up a what if. So it goes from a fourth to a fifth or whatever that would be, a fifth to a fourth or whatever that would be. So I just don't know on the Cooper Kupp thing, Sam. I was listening to you very intently and trying to hang on every word that you were saying. I can see the issues with Cooper Kupp. I mean, not only financially, like you mentioned, but to me, the biggest concern would be durability.
Yeah.
So if you give up the draft compensation, you take on the financial risk. When's the last time he has played a full 17-game season? Or when's the last time he's played through a season where he only missed 2 or 3 games? So that would be a significant risk. So that team that would maybe acquiring him, almost like you're watching with the New York Jets in the move to push every chip in possible they have left in their pocket. I mean, they're throwing out bingo chips right now because that's all they have left with how much they put on the table to try to get this season turned around.
Yeah, it's a good point. Like he's a difficult player to move because all those things are there. The high salary, the fact that he is this injury durability risk, and trying to find a team that makes sense, who's willing to go, who's either desperate enough or sees the upside enough to make that happen.
Yeah, but I don't know what's the upside. I mean, I understand, what week 2 or 3 he had 250 catches in a game, and I understand he's a very talented player, but he really hasn't played since then. So those are the things that, hey, you may get 1 or 2 games out of him, but with the rest of the time that he's with your roster, he may be on the sideline or in the training room the whole time. Not that he's not a great player, because when he's healthy, I still think he can produce at a very high level. He's just has issues staying healthy.
Rick, I'm curious at this time of year with the trade deadline coming up in a couple weeks, what is that like? Do you have 8 or 10 potential deals that are maybes? You're already talking to a bunch of GMs. Is it almost dependent on, hey man, if you lose the next 2 weeks, you're going to sell this guy? What are the conversations like at this time of year?
Yeah, a lot of times it starts with your pro department. And when I had George Payton as my assistant general manager, I said, get you and your guys. We had every pro scout assigned maybe 8 teams. So they would go through and communicate with their teams. It's continuing on it even after the 53-man cut. And you get 2 or 3 weeks in the season, you hear a lot of those conversations going on. Hey, we just lost player X for the rest of the year. So we're going to be looking for a receiver like we're going to be talking about here. Are you willing to potentially move X, Y, and Z? And then that goes back and forth. But when it comes to a point where, yeah, I think they're going to be very interested, that's usually when the general managers will step on. Anytime we got to the point, it's not the initial calls, it's you're letting your people do all the calls, identifying players that may be teams may be moving or putting them up on the trade block. And then as it progresses down through the process, when it gets to a point where you think something could potentially happen, that's usually when the GMs start to catch in. It's like when we saw Devontae Adams get traded. Well, Tuesday mornings, he was in the building. Well, I'm sure Joe Douglas and Tom Telesco had that deal was completely done before that game on Monday night when they lost it to the Buffalo Bills.
We obviously, some of these moves are kind of obvious to see, guys that are potentially available. Like, everyone knew that Amari Cooper was a potential trade candidate based off, his contract and all the other things. Is there any kind of sort of central, like we hear about the trade block all the time, is there actually a way for teams to proactively put out there to everybody, this guy is available, call and let's talk, right? Or is this all done with each individual team looking at everybody else's roster and essentially identifying guys and going after people themselves.
I hope it works like a fantasy league. Where
That's
you just,
what I'm saying.
You just put Kupp. You just say Cooper Kupp's on the trading block, and the other 31
got a central
GMs get an
spreadsheet
email
somewhere. Everyone's got access to the Google document. This guy's available for trade. Here's our phone number.
Make your best offer. We'll pay his salary.
Yeah.
It's all done by individual teams and the relationships you have with the teams. But I always thought, and it again comes down to if the media would ever get a hold, but if there was a clearinghouse with a private organization that just handled, hey, give me the opportunity or give me the names of people that will be potentially trade bait by the time the trade deadline comes on. So you had one centralized location to see if it's fact or not what you're just reading out in the media. I thought it was pretty cool if you had just some centralized clearinghouse that could handle all the guys that are going to be on a trading block, and teams can call knowing that it would be private conversations, and you trust that clearinghouse, whoever's running that clearinghouse. And then you can start. It's almost like one of those dating sites. Okay, it's like
a good business
you send
idea.
in your profile, and then you try to match with someone else's profile on what would be a potential working thing. I think that would be the easiest way to do it. But right now, it's all built on the relationships your pro department has, and they're calling their counterparts at other teams, and it goes back and forth. And then eventually, if there's something there, it'll come up to the general manager level.
I think we've come up with a good idea here, Rick. You, me, and Steve, we can go into business. We can create our little clearinghouse.
Okay, listen, I came up with the idea. If you guys want to jump on the bandwagon, we can maybe work something out on the side. But right now, I didn't hear you two come up with that idea.
Yeah, well, you just shouted it out to millions of listeners right now, so somebody's going to steal it. Come
Public IP right now. Like you voiced it out there. Look, you can't play GM with us. So this is part of our show. This is all together. We're all in this together, Rick.
Tinder for the trade deadline.
I forgot. Am I just a guest on this show? I'm not. Okay, sorry.
Well, when you're on the show, it automatically becomes part of our umbrella. That's how
our
this
IP.
works. Yeah,
it's our IP now.
It's our IP. You can be part of it, definitely. We want you involved, but you can't just steal the whole thing live on our show.
Trade deadline Tinder is what Rick has come up with so far.
Well, that'd be awesome, wouldn't it?
Again, I feel like you and the naming things is not good. Maybe we'll.
I finally got one. I think that's the best one I've ever come up with.
Maybe we'll get some consultation and what to name it.
Can't
Okay.
you call it a clearinghouse? Isn't that something? Didn't they have? Can you have a clearinghouse?
Yeah.
Is that
we're gonna
possible
do it.
or not?
Yeah,
We're going to build the business model as soon as we're off air here. I think this is a genius idea, and you said I want somebody to do it. Let's do it. Let's go do it.
This is the best thing we've achieved so far in the podcast. All right, I want to make you play GM now, Rick. If you're the Lions, they just lost Aiden Hutchinson to that injury. He was their pass rush for all intents and purposes. Everybody wants Detroit to go trading for a new pass rusher. Max Crosby's been linked to them. Dan Campbell's fielding questions about it every press conference. What would your move be if you're GM of the Lions?
I'm sure Brad Holmes is doing the behind-the-scenes stuff. Now, if we had a clearinghouse, he can just call the clearinghouse and see what's actually on the block or not on the block. But
that's what I'm saying.
Apparently, so. But what I would say this is you have to look at Brad Holmes and how he operates. He's very conservative. He will make moves if he thinks it'll definitely help the team. Would it be great to get a Max Crosby? I think it would be the best move they've ever made. I remember back in I can't remember when we made the trade for Jared Allen, and I made it with Carl Peterson when he was in Kansas City. Now that was during the offseason, but what a difference that Jared Allen made for the Minnesota Vikings when we were able to consummate that trade and give him the contract. Brad, they do it their way. They're going to not listen to what's outside. They're not going to listen to the noise. They're going to go about their business. They're excellent evaluators. They'll look through every practice squad, I'm sure. They'll probably make some calls to see if anyone's available at the right price. They're not going to overpay for anyone. But, in fantasy land, could you imagine Max Crosby and Aiden Hutchinson on the same team? Because they're almost two peas in a pod just from the way they play the game with the intensity, the effort, the energy. Max Crosby, what a great homecoming, played at Eastern Michigan. That would be just like a home run. But if you're Tom Telesco and ask him for 2 number 1 picks. Well, that's just an insane idea to give away that kind of draft capital. So I think they'll go through the practice squads. They'll see if anyone's available. I was curious to see if Hassan Reddick was going to be on the trade block because they had a short window, but it sounds like he's not going anywhere. So I think that they will continue to look, and if there is something out there that is right for them at the right price, they'll make that move. If not, you have to look at their roster right now. They may not have that elite edge pass rusher, but the defense has played much better. But how do they keep the defense at the level that they're playing? The offense has to stay on the field. The time of possession, the things that the offense is doing right now is, I think, second to none. And what Ben Johnson's doing in his creativity, he seemed to have the answer for sure against the Dallas Cowboys. He had the answer. It's the first time that he's seen some cracks, I think, in the Minnesota defense. And Brian Flores, who has done a phenomenal job as well, and maybe the top defensive coordinator in the league. That was a great chess match between those two that we watched last week. But they'll take their time. If there's a right move, they'll make it. If not, they'll just go on about their business like they always have.
One of the things I wanted to ask you about, and you touched on some of this, just for the Lions to get here, like I can't remember too many teams through the years who went from where the Lions were from a roster standpoint to as strong as it is right now. And it felt like brick by brick every year it was like, hey, we're going to get better in the trenches. Then we're going to get some playmakers. And they just kept adding and adding to that roster. What are your thoughts on just how the Lions have gotten to this point in about 3 or 4 years to have one of these best rosters in the NFL?
Well, I think it starts with the ownership and Sheila Hemp-Ford, who is very patient. And when Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes came together, they had a vision in how they were going to put this franchise together and how they're going to continue to build. We're not going to go out and make, splashy moves by signing this big free agent, that free agent, trying to fix it all in 1 year. They slowly had a plan in place. And if you remember Dan Campbell's first year, they struggled. And even going into a second year, I think they didn't win a game, but all of a sudden down the second half of the year, I believe that was the year that they ended up beating Green Bay and knocking Green Bay out of the playoffs in week 17, that you could start to see that their vision and the plan they had start coming. But what I respect the most about Brad Holmes, it's you can't take a running back in the first round. And what does he do? Take Jahmyr Gibbs, and look what Jahmyr Gibbs is doing for him. Sam Laporta, he's had like 3 catches, and they're all flat routes coming out of Iowa. Well, look what Sam Laporta has done. So they have Brian Branch. Well, he ran a 4.5 something at the combine. How can you draft him? He may be the best safety nick combination in the league right now at the level he's playing. So they don't listen to the outside noise. It was Penei Sewell versus Jamar Chase. They elected to go and start building that interior offensive line or the offensive line, and look at the dividends it's paying down the road now with everybody they have, and maybe one of the best offensive lines, if not the best in the league. So they do it their way. They build it, like you said, brick by brick. They're going to identify what fits that culture, and grit is definitely one of those characteristics that they're looking for, and it's paid dividends right now.
I wanted to ask about the rookie wide receivers. You go back a couple of months of the draft, and almost everyone had Marvin Harrison Jr. as one of the best prospects to come along in years. Malik Neighbors was right up there. A lot of people had him as the number 1 as well. Neighbors looks fantastic. Brian Thomas Jr. looks fantastic. The one guy from that top group that hasn't really looked the way we expected him to look is Marvin Harrison. What have you seen with his tape so far through 7 weeks?
Sam, you're not labeling him a bust yet, are you?
No, would never.
Okay. Let's kind of hold the horses here on this one. Just watching him, I just think the chemistry between him and Kyler Murray is not all in sync yet. Sometimes it looks forced. What I think Marvin Harrison Jr. needs to do is understand that the physicality at the catch point in this league, you have to go up and get the ball, because you are able to really, with your size and your athleticism, when you had 50-50 contested catches at the collegiate level, you're going to win most, if not all of those. Here it's a little different story. So I think as he continues to grow and understand the speed of the game, he's going to be fine. I still think he has an opportunity to be something like a Larry Fitzgerald down the road for the Arizona Cardinals, but it's going to take some time, and it's taken him a little longer than you see the Malik Neighbors, even the Brian Thomas Jr.'s. But Brian Thomas Jr., everybody knew he can run the vertical route and stretch the field. I think he just needs to clean up some of the drops. But other than that, I think he's going to be special too.
We were watching Monday Night Football, and the commentary team of Louis Riddick and Dan Orlovsky, they were pleading with the Cardinals to get Marvin Harrison more involved in the game, dial up some manufactured targets for him, just feed him the football earlier in the game, because you need your star wide receiver to be engaged. And then late in the game, in that game-winning drive they fired the ball to him, he drops it, and they get bailed out by an illegal hit. Myself and Steve had a real disagreement about this, and it's very important that you agree with me. So do you think that if you have a young star wide receiver like Marvin Harrison, you should get that guy involved early to get him into the game, or you run the risk of by the time you get to the fourth quarter, the guy hasn't seen the ball in 3 hours?
It's like me sitting on the show waiting to come on for 3 hours. I thought I'd be involved a lot earlier.
Got to get you involved earlier. Yeah.
Yeah. I do believe in getting the guy his touches early, because it gets him in a rhythm, it gets him in a flow. And I think, especially with a rookie, I remember, when we had Justin Jefferson his rookie year, he didn't even start the first 2 games. And then all of a sudden he starts making plays. And I just remember sitting in and listening to the offensive coordinators that I was with at the time. We need to get him in the flow of the game right away and get him lathered up so he can get going. But if you're just running routes and not getting the ball for 3 quarters, all of a sudden it's going to come your way in the fourth quarter. I think when you have a talent like Marvin Harrison Jr., you need to get him the ball early, whether it's a quick bubble screen or whatever way you go to manufacture some production for him, or at least get the ball in his hands and let him start running and getting hit in a little bit. He's going to be more productive during the game.
To be clear, for the record, that's an NFL general manager agreeing with me, not you.
Yeah, look what you did.
Why would you disagree with that, Steve? I don't understand that.
My point was, I would want to get the good receiver involved early because he's good. The point was, is he going to be worse in the fourth quarter if he doesn't?
Whoa.
Listen.
You saying that Marvin Harrison Jr. stinks?
No. Your point was, it doesn't matter if he never sees the ball. He's got to catch it in the fourth quarter, and if he can't, that's on him. It shouldn't make a difference if you don't throw him the ball.
The point was, the reason why you want to get him involved early. Sam's making the point that you get him involved early so that he's engaged and he's going to catch the ball in the fourth quarter. My point is, he's a good receiver. I want to get him involved early because he's a good receiver, and that's better for the team overall. And that if you don't get him involved early, that shouldn't affect his performance, 3 quarters later if he wasn't getting the ball early on. That was my point.
If he's your number one receiver, then shame on you if you're not getting him involved in the game early.
That's my point. That's my point.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So you both have good points.
Good job, Rick. Good job. That's good general managing, right? You're over here. We're just going to solve this problem by agreeing with everybody.
Sam, you make a great point. Yeah. Steve, you make a great point.
Steve has found
I'm going to lean more and get the guy the ball in his hand so he can get going earlier in the game. Maybe that'll help your offense, because the offense didn't look in sync through most of the game.
To be clear, that's not really Steve's point. That's a point that he's claiming as roughly point. Adjacent to the point he was making and trying to salvage some credit out of this.
We got a little bit of a crawdad guy, huh? Coming back on his original opinion. I used to have some of those guys sitting in the back room. I thought you said this. Not so fast.
That's not what I said. Yeah,
that's what everybody in Cleveland's doing right now. Everybody's coming out. I just don't want everybody to know I was against this Watson signing.
I didn't want him. Look there's the finger pointing.
Yeah, just so you know. Did you record all your meetings just so nobody could do that?
No, but you know what I did? I was a very copious note taker. So
we got
as
the minutes.
People were talking, I would write the notes. One, it helped me focus on what people were saying, and it just registered in my head better. But two, I knew people end up speaking with forked tongue at times when they say one thing and it doesn't work out.
Yeah,
so
like Steve.
It was all documented, not recorded, but I documented everything everybody said in meetings.
Good thing you don't have the notes from our podcast the other night. You don't know exactly what I said, so you take my word for it.
But it's a perfect segue into Bryce Young, because we remember all too well how much Rick loved Bryce Young.
Now, nice to our guest. I was gonna set it up differently.
Did we as well? Yes.
Yes.
But so okay. Two parts to this, I guess. Number one, you love Bryce Young just like we did, and you saw, I think, a lot of the same things. Why has it been so spectacularly bad for him so far? And like at this point, given what we've seen, if you're an NFL general manager somewhere else, are you leaning on those priors and being like, this is a perfect buy low opportunity. We can get this guy in and turn him into the player that we thought he was 18 months ago?
Yeah, I don't know if he's ready already for a change of scenery, but everybody's burying this poor kid after, I think, 19 games. And last year, I don't know if he even had a chance to have a chance. It looked like he was drinking out of a fire hose, whether he was trying to make the protection calls. He didn't have a lot of talent up front. He didn't have a lot of talent at the skill position. They were trying to put too much on his plate instead of just simplifying and letting him grow. And you see, some of these rookie quarterbacks, I mean, Caleb struggled early in the season, and look how he's starting to hit his stride, but he has a lot of talent around him. Jaden Daniels was an exception to the rule. He was almost a C.J. Stroud exception, what we seen last year, and with what C.J. did, but C.J. had more talent around him than I think and people anticipated. Just like you said earlier in the show, I think the Commanders have a lot more talent on offense than people anticipated before the season started, especially at the offensive line. But I don't know if it's a better change of scenery for Bryce. I think if Carolina can move him, and sometimes when he has struggled so badly, that maybe it is, hey, you got a new head coach, you got a new general manager, let's get our own guys in here. I didn't make that pick. Whoever made that pick is no longer there. And let's get what we can for him, and then we'll start over again. Because right now, I don't know if Andy Dalton is given, except for that first game he came in, and you got the Andy Dalton push. Other than that, it's been very average, in my opinion, and below average. He threw 2 interceptions last week that were horrible. So is that an indictment on Bryce Young and Andy Dalton, or is it just where their team is right now? But if I had to pick a team, if you guys even talked about this, what team do you think would benefit and best fit what Bryce Young does and what his strengths are?
Sam and I did talk about this a couple weeks ago. The 2 teams that came to mind were the Miami Dolphins and the Rams. But the Dolphins first, obviously, with the Tua situation.
Yeah, no, to me, I think it'd be an ideal fit for Bryce Young to be in that Miami offense, because you saw Tua was a bust. All of a sudden, they put him in that offense with those playmakers around him. I think that Bryce Young would be a great fit down in Miami.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, and then I brought up the Rams just because it does feel like every year they're trying to figure out with Stafford, is he getting closer to retirement? Do they want a succession plan? And, McVay's done nice things with quarterbacks through the years, so why not take a shot on a former number 1 overall pick?
Yeah, the only thing I say in Miami, and I've been down and covered their camp a couple times, is that how quickly the ball has to come out. And like I said, with the playmakers, and, Tua looked like a different player once Mike McDaniel got down there and started implementing that scheme. And you can see the difference when you're just down there watching him practice. And I think that would have the same effect on Bryce Young getting in a system like that, because I think that fits what we saw in college. That fits his strengths.
I love it, Rick. Appreciate it, man. That was a good appearance today. Maybe
well,
creeping
thanks,
up
Vines.
to
I appreciate. Yeah, I appreciate
top 15,
it.
Maybe
bumping them up.
Top 15 in our history, maybe.
I still didn't make I'm still not in the playoffs yet, so maybe next year, if I get a shot to come on again next year, maybe I'll give it a shot. But
it depends how our business plan goes.
Yes,
if we get that rolling, if we start bringing in the big bucks, then we'll bump you right up the list.
Okay, and then if you start the clearinghouse, I already have my lawyers all set up that I'm going to take you both down. If I'm not,
we'll talk off air about the clearinghouse. You're all over the media these days. Where can everybody find your great work, Rick?
Oh God, I know I'm doing. Well, this is the first time. I mean, I thought that the 33rd team just left me by the wayside, and so it was nice to get on here today. And you could always go on to CBS HQ and see the stuff that I do with the First Pick podcast. That's draft related. We have a big show coming up, and we're doing these quarterback ratings every week, and every week it seems to change. I mean, I've had Carson Beck up there, and then then after that performance in Texas, he's going to drop. Well, is there really a legit number one quarterback right now? And I don't know how much you guys have watched these guys, but it changes every week.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I've got the first pick in the draft. It's almost like a couple years ago when Jacksonville, when there wasn't a quarterback out there, it was Walker or Hutchinson. Right. You had to make that decision. And I think it's going to trend that way, at least right now, when I'm watching all these quarterbacks, because of the inconsistent performances that are up and down week in and week out. So that's one of the areas. Then I have a couple other consulting jobs that I cannot divulge on the air. Of course.
And so I've been doing a weekly draft hit. Do you want to do that? Do you want to do your top 5 QBs with us?
Yeah, well, we do the Sirius XM 5 to 8 End Zone show and preview every game on Saturday nights as well. But I don't know, Steve. Let me just think about that. Let me see. You peoples get with my peoples. We can maybe talk through it.
One last thing.
But I do have about 150 of these guys already written up and have a pretty good idea on what this draft is starting to shape up to be.
Good. Yeah, I want some sleepers and your QBs. We'll see if you're willing to do it. And then how's Pete Prisco doing, and how's Mike Renner doing? We just got to check in on our CBS friends here.
Yeah, no, they're doing great.
Okay.
Pete's as prickly as ever, so you know he's doing fine, and Mike's done a great job. I think that was a great addition at CBS.
Yeah, Mike's awesome. He's one of us from years ago. So anyway, thanks, Rick. Appreciate it. And yeah, we'll talk business off air. All right.
Okay. Is that it? I'm done.
That's it. You can go.
Right.
Yeah. Do I get a coffee cup?
Do you want to stay? Does Rick want to stay for the Shouty Shows?
Oh,
do you want to stick around? Do you want it?
Boys, I've got some other commitments.
Okay. All right. Get out of here.
It was nice that you invited me on for the first time this year.
We'll have you back. You did good.
All right, thanks. Maybe
Rick.
top 15. Yeah, maybe next show I can get into the playoffs.
Gotta have goals. Rick.
Rick Spielman, everybody.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Take it easy.
Yeah.
I like Rick more than I let on the show. He's great.
He is fun.
Always have fun. And we got a whole business plan sorted. Didn't know we wanted to build the clearinghouse. I could do that. I could build a clearinghouse.
That's perfect. Yeah, I think that's an ideal gig for all of us.
I'm not good at naming things, but I think trade deadline Tinder is a good name. Tinder might crack down on that.
Yes. But, I don't know if that's the name is there, but I think the idea is there, and that's the important part.
Is absolutely there. What do we have next?
You have a read to do?
It's not a read. It's a full engagement piece.
No, I see.
Because I'm engaged with GameTime. This whole episode is brought to you by GameTime. Take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets, game tickets, show tickets, whatever it might be with GameTime. GameTime has a new feature called GameTime Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. GameTime Picks filters out the fluff to show you incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I've had great experiences with GameTime, whether it's live games, was looking at concerts recently, looking at some comedians coming through town, and it is so convenient. My favorite part, of course, is the all-in pricing. You just toggle this, and there's no surprises. You don't have to get to checkout, and all of a sudden the price is different. You toggle that, and boom, you already know what the price is. GameTime Picks, as I mentioned, just makes the curation so much easier to save money on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever it might be. The seat views, you get the panoramic view in the app before you buy, and they do a great job with the lowest price guarantee. You get the lowest price guarantee, or GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference. and your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So this is a no-brainer. Take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, use the code CheckTheMic, and you get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CheckTheMic, CheckTheMic, for $20 off. Anytime I talk to any of my friends and they're like, hey, someone's coming to town, concert, comedy, games, I'm just like, hey, get to GameTime. And I also tell them, use the code, CheckTheMic, get the $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it? GameTime.
You get Eddie Izzard coming to town, comedian.
There's someone else. Yeah, we were looking at all sorts of comedy shows. Is Bargatze coming back at all soon?
I don't know.
I'm going to check GameTime and see.
You should.
I like him.
He's good.
He's taking off.
Taking off?
Big time Main Street. He's doing
Young
SNL and stuff.
Up-and-comer?
Yeah. You saw him live, and I'm like, he's all over my feed here.
It's very good.
So I want to go see him too.
Yeah.
We're going to talk rookies, and then we'll get into the Shouty Shows here.
Oh, before we do that, I have an update from our Discord. There's a fantasy league, 2 of them, in fact, multiple fantasy leagues going on the Discord. They have 72 players first year, so that a couple of people that sort of signed up, played for a couple of weeks, and then obviously go inactive, disappear. So we're looking for some replacement players. Aaron in the Discord is looking for a couple of people. So if you go into the Discord, which you can find in the description of this show, join the Discord, check the announcements channel in the Discord if you're interested in signing up and being a replacement player for these fantasy leagues. Redraft, 24-team leagues, full analytical custom scoring, full defenses, IDP, etc. So dive into the Discord anyway, because it's a good place to be. And then if you're interested in replacing some dropouts of the fantasy football, jump in.
I dropped into the Discord. I spend most of my time in the talking draft over there. So we've been doing our weekly draft shows. My guest this week's Dane Brugler from The Athletic. Already recorded it, but I get in there asking for draft questions. I take everybody's draft questions for Dane or whoever the guest is. Maybe Rick, if he takes me up on the offer. I forgot that he's knee deep in prospect evaluations already. So we can have Rick on the show in a couple weeks, maybe talking draft. But we got Dane coming up, YouTube exclusive on Friday. But I get a lot of my questions straight from the Discord. So be sure to sign up, get in there. Link is in the description. You want to talk rookies?
Yeah.
So we had an idea. I don't know where it came from. Top 5 rookies so far. As you and I talked through them, we said, well, Jaden Daniels is on our list.
Yep.
Brock Bowers is on our list. We're talking Bowers is going to break tight end records. Daniels looks unbelievable so far. So let's say they're the best so far as rookies. Brock Bowers leads all rookies with his 47 receptions. Raiders are struggling, but he looks like maybe their best player already.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he looks sensational. He's not just performing well for a rookie. I mean, he's performing well for any tight end, any player, period. I mean, his numbers are nuts. He is the number 1 target on that offense and one of the better players in the NFL. Forget rookies.
And then, Jaden Daniels, we know. We've talked a lot about him looking outstanding. So let's say they're 1 and 2 on our top 5 rookie list, and then I'll let you go, and then I'll give you the rest of mine.
Yeah, with those being the clear, I think, top 2, I think the rest, you get a couple of guys that are probably, or should be, I think, in the list, and then it gets very debatable where you could have a lot of guys that have been quite impressive. I think the third best guy, even though he's missed a couple of games, has been Malik Neighbors. I mean, for all the sort of concerns of, hey, how come Marvin Harrison hasn't hit the ground running? Why doesn't he look as amazing as we thought he would? A large part of it is because you contrast him directly with Malik Neighbors, who looks like the next one of these instant superstar wide receivers that the second he got onto the field, you're like, the explosiveness, the quick twitch, the body contortion, all that stuff that we saw at LSU immediately translates, and he's the Giants' number 1 option. Now, his season might get derailed a little bit by Andrew Thomas going down, and suddenly the Giants just don't have a functional offense. But when it was working, Neighbors looked amazing.
Yeah, he absolutely looks the part. I treated this a little differently. It wasn't a pure ranking for me. I kind of saw yours and was like, I want to mix up a few different names here. But Neighbors has been unbelievable. And I think the way you positioned it, it's kind of like as soon as Jaden Daniels had 3 good games, people were like, whoa, should we rethink who went number 1 overall between Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams? Now Caleb Williams looks a lot better. Like, it's too early to tell, but that's how good Neighbors has looked, is that this isn't even revisionist history. There were a lot of people around the league who said Neighbors is wide receiver 1.
Yeah.
Talked to a QB coach around the league who said he's the best receiver prospect he's scouted. So this isn't a surprise. He's just kind of backed it up and looked as advertised for the Giants.
Yeah, no, he has. He's looked absolutely spectacular. And yeah, it was a sort of 1-1A type of, I mean, we were saying, look, any of the three, and Odunze was sort of in that conversation as well, though I think was a clear 3 relative to the other 2. But any of those 3, I think, would have been wide receiver 1 in most draft classes, and they just happened to all rock up at the same time.
Trying to figure out what I did wrong to get this emoji in our chat here.
Nice. Cool.
What did I do?
Well, you figure that out, and then...
Are you going 3, 4, 5, or do you want me to give you my 3?
No, I'll give us your 3.
I'm going to say Joe Alt, right tackle for the Chargers. You know, a lot of I think he's been the best of the rookie tackles. All of them are moving sides, and we talked about this as a big storyline this entire season. Left tackle's moving to right tackle's moving to left tackle. Alt looks outstanding. He's almost my size, is like 6'9", but he still, fires out low. Zone blocking looks really good. Run blocking has been fantastic, and smooth in pass protection. So he's taken to the move to right tackle.
Yep.
And looks really good right now.
No,
and again, the debate between Joe Alt, like it was Joe Alt went 5, Neighbors went 6. You could watch the Chargers offense and say, man, what would Malik Neighbors do with Justin Herbert? You can say that, but I'm not saying they made the wrong move at all. I think Alt is going to be really good for a long time at right tackle for them.
Yeah, and that's still a very real debate to be had. Like, they have a crying need for wide receiver, and a guy like Neighbors I think would absolutely move the needle, but obviously it would come at the sacrifice of going from Joe Alt to who knows what at right tackle if they hadn't made that move.
All right, give me number 4.
Jared Verse. I think he was one of the better. I think there was an argument that he was the second best pass rusher in the draft. We had Latu as the clear number 1. So far, I think through 7 weeks, Verse has been the best, the most impressive of these rookie edge rushers. He's just been consistently dominant, productive. That power that he brings, the sort of violence that he plays the game with, that absolutely translates. I mean, that guy's looking he's looking to go and beat his guy up physically, and then if he can make a pass rush move along the way, fine. But he's coming after you.
I put Verse at 5, and again, I'm not trying like Malik Neighbors isn't on my list. I was just trying to mix up a few different names. Neighbors would be up there. I put Verse at 5. The violence you mentioned is right, and I have a knack on Twitter, trying to got to avoid being old takes exposed, right? So instead of making declarative statements, you ask questions. You don't say this player is. You
doesn't stop it.
You say, is this player?
Yeah.
And you raise your voice a little bit. And you put a question mark.
Doesn't stop it.
And so then what happens is, like, I posed the question around draft time. I said, are we sleeping on Jared Verse maybe being edge 1 in this class? Question mark. That's how you do it. And now I can go back to that and say, see,
yeah,
I hinted at this.
See, people don't.
And
make
look
the
at him looking like edge 1 right now. I'm right.
People don't make the distinction. If you put it out there, even if there's a question mark at the end, they're just like, see, he said it. He said he was edge 1.
Yeah. No,
so that you'll get all take exposed for just asking the question.
No, that's true.
Even if
I asked a question, all I did was ask a question.
So asking the question can be anything from I believe this and I'm asking the question to I don't believe this at all and I'm just asking how many people think this. But all takes exposed will get you either way.
Well, they won't get me on this one because I posed the question: is Jared Verse being slept on as edge 1? I think we've been a little disappointed with our guy Latu as far as his down-to-down consistency. Dallas Turner has been out of the lineup quite a bit. Jared Verse over there with 27 pressures per our friends over at PFF. You can get all that data, part of your PFF Plus subscription. But he's got 10 more pressures than any other rookie, as Ben Allen has written up on the screen there.
And I don't think, it's early, right? It's not like we're declaring any one of these guys.
Oh, no, you said it.
No.
This is it. Jared Verse, best edge.
But through 7
rookie,
games,
no matter what.
I think Verse has definitely been the best of them.
Yeah, he's my 5. I put Brian Thomas Jr. at 4. So impressed with him. We broke him down probably more than any receiver. When you watched him at LSU, huge, big playability. I thought he lacked some consistency. Was kind of a breakout player last year. But, I think he's answered a lot of the questions that we had, which is intermediate routes, can he do that? Is he going to consistently get open? Is he going to catch the ball consistently enough? And he's just been open down the field quite a bit. Those 513 receiving yards that lead all rookies, not to do the what-if game, but, you could easily tack on 60 more to that if, Trevor Lawrence didn't miss him on one where he was open against the Texans a few weeks ago. So I think he's been outstanding. It's an interesting dynamic in Jacksonville because they're throwing the ball down the field so much, and we kind of anticipated that. And the offense has been better in recent weeks, but inconsistent because they don't have the short and intermediate threat as much. Evan Ingram, I think, stepping up there, but Thomas being a vertical threat and being better than we expected, he deserves to be on this list.
Yeah, he looks so good. I mean, the vertical threat stuff is clear. That was what we expected him to bring to the table. It's everything else that's been more impressive to me, like his route running chops, his ability to laterally move around, the separation on the underneath things it's not more impressive because the vertical stuff is really good, but it's like that's the area that was a question mark relative to what he had on tape in college, and he just looks spectacular at all that stuff. So, yeah, Brian Thomas Jr., I think, looks amazing so far.
So he's my 4 versus my 5. We already talked about him. So who's your 5 in this top 5 here?
Dominic Pooney, the 49ers offensive guard, a Mike Renner guy.
We are obligated, I think, for the rest of Pooney's career. Anytime we talk him up, we need to give Renner the shout-out.
Now, Renner has a tendency to love a random mid-round, Polynesian heritage type of offensive lineman. Yeah. So it doesn't always work out, but this one he nailed. He really liked Dominic Pooney from Kansas, and he looks great so far for the 49ers. And again, that was, for the several year in a row, you're like, this 49ers offensive line could be a problem. But Pooney steps in, completely solidifies the right guard spot. He's been very good. Hasn't given up a sack or a hit yet this season. Has given up a little bit of pressure, but he's been strong as a run blocker. He's been good in pass protection. He's been intelligent. Like, you can see him sifting through assignments, which is ever more important given today's NFL of all these simulated pressures and, guys up at the line. Are they coming? Are they dropping? Can you make a quick adjustment after the snap? He looks really good.
The toughest part about his evaluation, and I talked to Renner about this, was he never really had a traditional pass set. He was playing left tackle at Kansas State, and it was just a lot of quick game type of quick sets, and that was tough to project. But I remember he reminded me. Cody Whitehair was another guy that Renner loved coming out of Kansas State, and it was the grip strength, and it was like when he locks on, there's something there type of deal. That was where I watched Pooney last year. I was like, man, he's got impressive strength, and the move to guard I think makes a lot of sense for him, and great addition for the Niners so far this year. Mm-hmm. And then there's a whole bunch of other rookies that we debated that were close, really good seasons, impressive. But yeah, it's a pretty good crop in this top 5. I mean, Caleb Williams should be discussed in there too, I think, as he's turning the corner here. But with a slow start, it's tough to say, he's been one of the 5 best.
Yeah, I mean, 5 is
positionally agnostic here.
5 is a very short list, particularly when 2 of the names are essentially taken up with the 2 guys that have been genuine superstars. But like other names that I had out there as guys that could easily have made a top 5. Zach Frazier from the Pittsburgh Steelers, the latest in the succession line of Hall of Fame centers. Yeah, Evan Williams, who we talked about, the amazing work he did one-on-one against Kyler Murray in the flat, Green Bay Packers.
A lot of big plays
back.
for him so far.
T'Vondre Sweat, all 366 pounds of him on the defensive line for Tennessee. Like, there have been a lot of impressive players.
All right, it's time. My favorite segment every week. My favorite time of the week, I think. Us against the Shouty Shows.
Shouty Show.
The Shouty Show segment. This is, I think it's catching on. People are enjoying listening to the Shouty Shows with us. So let's get right to it. What do we have from the Shouty Shows this week?
I have to say, I've thought about it very deeply. And I got to tell you, everybody knows how I feel about Aaron Rodgers.
Everybody.
He has looked so bad. I've actually looked at the screen and found myself saying, it might be time for him to really retire. Because I'm not used to seeing this Aaron Rodgers. I mean, 6 interceptions over the last 3 games. No leadership whatsoever. Everything seems to be up in the air and a bit awry and off kilter. And when I look at Aaron Rodgers, in terms of talent, not resume, in terms of talent, I think Peyton Manning. I think Tom Brady. I think Dan Marino. I think some of the all-time great quarterbacks that have ever blessed this game. And what I'm seeing from him now is a shell of that person. And I hate it. It looks very, very bad. But he ain't the bad man that I know him to be. This year, he's just been bad.
No, he hasn't.
Nope. No, he hasn't.
People, I think, are looking too much at just, some box score numbers and the Jets' lack of overall offensive efficiency and are saying Aaron Rodgers is playing bad. This happened after the Vikings game in London where he was genuinely bad, but it's happened all the way through the season. Rodgers has a top 10 PFF grade this season. He is not playing bad on a week-to-week basis. The Jets' offense is overall struggling, and you've made the point that because of this unique dynamic where Rodgers might be, offensive coordinator, head coach, and GM in chief, he could get more responsibility and more blame because of that. But Aaron Rodgers, the quarterback, is just not playing as bad as Stephen A. Smith thinks he is.
Yeah, I am generally of the mind that, we don't work for PFF anymore, but I still believe the PFF grade is the best indicator of the player's contribution to production. And I would lean on that over things like EPA or QBR or passer rating or anything else. And this is like the one time where I might lean more into those numbers and say Rodgers might have more to do that with that because of everything else we've said. What if Stephen A. looked at Patrick, what if the Chiefs you lose the game to the Ravens in week 1, you win by a toe, you win by a defensive pass interference. I'm just saying, Stephen A., just if the Chiefs were 3-3 at this point, because they're literally a handful of plays away from being 3-3 instead of 6-0, and you could say, you would say, I've thought about this long and hard. And Patrick Mahomes, 6 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. I think he's done. Yeah. I think he's lost it. But because Aaron Rodgers is 40, and we all have it in our brain that when you're 40, everything it's got to be your fault when you're 40. Patrick Mahomes is 29, so he can't be hitting a cliff or hitting a. But if you just box score watched Patrick Mahomes and watch this Chiefs offense, which hasn't been that much better than the Jets, it's been different, but not that much better. You would maybe Patrick Mahomes 44.4 passer rating on Sunday against the Niners. But they won because the defense is unbelievable.
Even just forget the record part of it. Aaron Rodgers is playing better this season than Patrick Mahomes. I'll just put that out there as a statement of fact, right? And Stephen A. Smith wants Aaron Rodgers to retire. He's playing so badly.
And Mahomes is the number 2 favorite for MVP.
And I doubt has said a critical word about Patrick Mahomes because the Chiefs are winning games, right? That's where we are with this. Is he playing so bad that we need to force him into retirement because Stephen A. can't handle it? No, that's an absurd take, one that you would rightly expect to come out of Stephen A.'s mouth.
Good Shouty showing, though. Good Shouty show. I liked how he started it with, I've thought about this long and hard. It's like all the other stuff I'm just, throwing against the wall. I'm not really putting the work in, but I did a little research on this one, and Rodgers needs to retire. All right, what else we got here?
I can't promise you Steelers fans that I will win you a Super Bowl. But I can promise you that without me, y'all not going to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's right.
What Russ did was remind people why he's a Hall of Famer. What Russ did was remind people why he got $242 million. What Russ did was remind people why he's a Super Bowl champ. Then he also did another thing. He told people things. He reminded us of things we knew, but he told us things we didn't know. He told Mike Tomlin, hey, you were right when you said you're not trying to win games, you're trying to win a world championship. He told Steelers fans, hey, I was worth the wait. He told George Pickens, hey, you were right when you said you are a top 5 receiver, you just need somebody to get you the ball. He reminded the world of things and he told us things simultaneously, but the overwhelming message to me is I can't guarantee you Russ will win you a Super Bowl. But I can guarantee you, without Russell Wilson, you won't win a Super Bowl.
All right. We've gotten to the Acho point.
God, we've reached the Acho portion
of the Shouty Shows.
Shouty Shows segment.
Welcome, Emmanuel Acho, to the
Shouty
Show segment.
The heir apparent of the Shouty Show world. I would say that's.
Oh, he is. I think it was like with chess, right? Like whoever was like the best at chess back in like the late 90s, he just hit a point where it's like the game's passed me by type of thing. Like it's just expanded so far that he's no longer the greatest. I forget the exact dynamic there, but chess has just evolved so much that it's, if you were great 20 years ago, you're no longer great. Acho has that ability. He has the ability to push Skip, Stephen A. He can push them out of sight, out of mind with his ability to pull takes
You're saying
out of nowhere.
Acho has the capacity to take the Shouty Show world to new heights.
All I'm saying is he's Russ. In his own analogy, he's Russ, and Skip and Stephen A. are merely Justin Fields.
Acho
can win you a Super Bowl of Shouty Showness
when
those other guys are just game managers.
Well, he is a messianic figure of the Shouty Show world, right? He is the guy that's going to, with the halo over his head, that's going to take you to the new...
Right, the other guys...
The promised land.
But the other guys, they set the path, right?
Yeah.
And he saw it, right? And he saw it, and he was like, I'm taking it to the next level.
Never has a human pursued something more obviously or harder than Emmanuel Acho has pursued becoming the new Skip Bayless or
it's impressive.
Stephen A. Smith.
Like last year's one with the second USC lost their second game. And, you come out of the weekend, it's like, oh, Caleb Williams struggled a little bit. Let's talk about this. And Acho was like, he should sit out the rest of the season. That's a good one.
That was like when
USC's 6-2. He should sit out the rest of the season. Just get ready for the draft.
Yeah. That was like when was it Renner? Renner claimed that Dak should sit out like the rest of the year.
That was
get
years
his contract.
Ago. Yeah, that was when Renner was trying to get on the Bachelorette
contract.
and everything. All right, so what are we talking about here? So I've said enough about the Russ game. I think the best thing that Russell Wilson did was throw jump balls to George Pickens and let George Pickens be George Pickens.
Yeah.
But like the video that I showed the other day, like Russ is something like if you take away George Pickens being superhuman on 2 catches, one of which bounced off the cornerback that was 5 yards underthrown. Just take those away. Russ is like 14 of 27 for 160. It looks exactly like a Broncos game with Nathaniel Hackett. I cannot believe we all watched the same football game, watched him underthrow a pass that bounced 7 times off a corner and on George Pickens to earn him 35 yards. Watch George Pickens hold a corner off with one hand, catch the ball with the other hand, and that's like 100 of his yards. We watched that same game, and people come away with, oh, Russ is, Super Bowl caliber. He reminded you why he's so great.
Forget Nathaniel Hackett Broncos game. It looked like a Justin Fields game this season without the rushing. Right? Like,
pretty much.
If you take the plays where George Pickens was 75% responsible for making the play happen, with Russ contributing 25% for putting the ball in a just about catchable area, right? If we take those passes away from him, and to be fair, there is a merit in simply putting that ball in the air that I do think is worth noting,
agree.
Right?
Can I just add credit for making the play? I'm just telling you, if Pickens doesn't make those catches, you're not mentally giving him the same credit for that.
But it's a different thing, right? Like it is important to note that his portion of that play is significantly less than George Pickens, who had to turn a bad pass into a good play.
Well said.
But there is a credit that belongs with Russell Wilson for simply attempting that pass in the first place, which Justin Fields often doesn't, right? And that is a notable thing. But if you do remove those plays, if Pickens simply isn't able to make miracle catches happen twice, Russell Wilson comes out of that game with a stat line that looks very like any normal Justin Fields game, minus the rushing threat. The Steelers presumably score significantly fewer points, and we're like all the people that were saying it was madness to go to Russell Wilson are having the exact, in fact, Acho is having the exact opposite take on that morning. He's like, I told you it was stupid to go away from the superstar athlete. What are you doing? Now you can't win a game. The Jets beat you.
Can we get what was his opinion prior to the game?
That would be amazing. But anyway, it is fascinating to me. I mean, we have gone 180.
Russ reminded us, though.
Coming into the game, there were a bunch of people being like, this is dumb. There's no justification for going to Russell Wilson over Justin Fields. Keep Fields in there. I don't understand what they're doing. And we were like, I mean, it's probably quite similar, and I think there's at least an argument to see what you have with Russell Wilson, right? Coming out of the game, all the people are like, you see, this is why Mike Tomlin gets paid the big bucks. Look at this move. They win a Super Bowl now. This is genius. And we're like, it was slightly better. like a lot of the really better part was was George Pickens. Like this didn't, so it's still really close. It might be marginally better with Russell Wilson there, but it's not night and day in either direction. And people refuse to exist outside of the poles of extreme.
And I would just go back. My whole point with Russ was like he might give you the ability to unlock the downfield passing attack. Not because he's great, but because he will make those throws. And right now you got the result. We said on Monday it raises the ceiling of this offense, I think.
But as we said,
we did see that in action, but not because Russ was like dropping dimes like he used to.
But as we said, George Pickens, who may be the best contested catch receiver in football, has a career contested catch rate of 46%, right? If he therefore, going forward, let's say we're talking two plays at the moment, right? His career rate, he hits less than one of those two plays on average, right? And if 0 of 2 hit, suddenly we're talking catastrophe. It's like the Rashid Shaheed thing, right? The Saints offense earlier in the year was relying on Derek Carr to hit every one of the targets to Rashid Shaheed deep down the field. If that happens, they cook. If that stops happening, they cease to cook.
I hate that I care about regression to the mean. Don't you hate that? All right, good discussion. By the way, it's going to get even more emphasized. They're playing the Giants on Monday Night Football this week, so more takes flowing next week on Russ. All right, what's the third one here today?
I feel like with Detroit, I'm watching this sort of adolescent boy, and every couple months his voice gets deeper. He's got more confidence. Few pimples, but then he walks out one morning and mom looks up and he's 6'5", 245 and has a D1 scholarship offer to Ohio State or Michigan.
Drinking 9 espressos.
They just looked the part. Power, finesse, run game, effortless completions, win leading, come back when trailing. I don't see anything about Detroit I don't like. I've just seen it for years from Kansas City. I've never seen it before from Detroit. This year was going to be an interesting year for the Lions. Instead of hunting, they were the hunted. They're fine.
So I agree with most of that stuff.
Yeah.
I would just say as the analogy master on this show, I want to know where that analogy stacks up for you.
I think that was pretty good. Yeah,
you like the adolescent boy analogy.
I think that's not a bad analogy. It's
couple pimples, now he's 6'5", 245,
the Lions
tight end.
Have been a coming of age story over the last few years, right? They've been this awkward, child who was forgotten about, and suddenly they're a monster they have to contend with. Yeah, I think that was generally pretty good analysis. Nothing I don't like. The secondary is a little concerning and grabby, and they lost a pass rusher who was the only real source of pass rush. As long as, if Goff plays like that, it might not matter. But
Howard says Lions went through puberty.
But I do think, I think there are reasons to potentially be concerned that will come back to bite at some point during the season.
So, yeah, I guess Coward said a lot of the same stuff that we said, minus the puberty analogy.
And that was pretty measured, pretty middle of the road. That wasn't shouty at all.
Oh no, it was measure take.
Yeah,
it's measure take. That's low on the Shouty Show scale. Measure take.
Good. Could we get like a shouty meter?
We should have a meter. Yeah,
it's like full Shouty Show, and that's like it's relatively mild take.
Like Stephen A's. Where would you put it? Like 1 to 10, Shouty Show is quintessential. This is Skip. Yeah. The standard, a 10 is Skip Bayless's the standard that I presented last week, which is Vince Young and Jay Cutler are more clutch than Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. So therefore, I would take them. That's a 10.
So that or when he was like claiming Tim Tebow is the greatest. Like didn't he have at one point he wanted Tebow over Brady or something insane like that kind of thing? Or
people only remember him being a Brady guy late in the years. He was always picking against Brady with like the new sensation. Yes.
Or when LeBron makes his like 58th consecutive winning shot and Skip comes out like it's not great.
Yeah,
not that kind of thing. That's peak.
Jordan would have hit a 3 instead of 2.
That's 10 out of 10 Shouty Show business. And then you get down to the milder pedestrian measured takes.
Like Coward's a 2 on this one. I think Acho and Stephen A are in the 7 to 8 range.
Acho, that's definitely an 8. An Acho.
Yeah.
Stephen A is probably a 7.
Yeah. It's like one of those Rodgers. We watched the interception clang off of Garrett Wilson's chest. We all saw that. Right? Did we all see that? Was Stephen A. sleeping? Do they get up? Is it an early show? Does he sleep?
He probably didn't see that.
Through Sunday Night Football?
He's not even looking for that stuff. He's like looking for what am I seeing?
Do you think they just present him paper with like a few stats or whatever?
The interceptions? Not a chance in hell he knew how many interceptions he'd thrown this season.
He knows. He just said he had six interceptions.
Well, that's
last
what I'm
two
saying.
games.
Somebody made him read that out. Like, there's no way he knew that when he was crafting. What am I going to?
Oh, that's right. He crafts the take, and then they give him data to support
Correct.
it. I got it.
Here's what I want to rant about today.
Yeah.
Go away and find me supporting evidence.
Aaron Rodgers, turnover machine. Do you have any data to back that up? Oh yeah, he has 7 interceptions this year. Tied for 4th in the league.
Bingo. And if you don't, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to rant it anyway.
The interception leaders this year: Gardner Minshew, Jordan Love, and Patrick Mahomes. All have 8. All right, that was good. It's fun times, as always.
Fun times.
It's my favorite segment of the week. Right before I put my PrizePicks lineup together, so let's do that. Let's do my PrizePicks lineup for the week. Didn't go as planned last week. Let me just say
Mine
this:
did.
As a podcast, we have won every week.
True.
There was I don't even want to tell the story, but forget it.
Okay.
I can't do it. When we combine forces, we've done a good job. When we combine forces, we've done a good job.
I see.
There was a point in my college career where I was like pitcher of the week in the conference, and when you combined me with someone else, we'd had like 6 straight. So that's what I feel like. We're
It's
combining.
like you and the guy that claimed that one night him and Wilt Chamberlain pulled a gazillion rebounds because he had one, and Wilt Chamberlain set a record.
But like if we combine, I won 3 straight. You have 1, and here we are. We're doing a great job. So I'm going to set my PrizePicks lineup for this week. So I'm going to start with I'm going back to the Rome Odunze well.
Yeah, that seems to be a happy hunting ground for you.
It is. Rome Odunze, more than 31.5 receiving yards. I like this one. I think he's going to continue to just be a bigger part of that offense for the Bears. They're playing the Commanders. Still don't love that Commanders defense despite them playing better last week. And so as long as the projection stays in the low 30s, I'm going to be eyeing this every single week because I think Odunze continues to grow in that offense. The one part of my lineup that was good last week was Sam Darnold and his passing yard projection. So I'm going to go back to that one again as well. Minnesota's playing Thursday Night Football against the Rams, 238.5 passing yards. He's been over 255 in half of his games. So I like Darnold. His more than, I think they're going to throw the ball pretty well against the Rams here. And then this last projection, like if I told you this would be the projection, maybe last year you would believe it, but 2 years ago, Patrick Mahomes, a 226.5 passing yard projection. That is insanely low.
Yeah.
When you just say this is Patrick Mahomes. Now this offense has not been great. He threw for like $150 last week, threw for $150 back in week 2 against the lowly Bengals. But this week, the lowly Bengals pass defense, I should say. This week is against the lowly Raiders in the Dome. And Kelsey might get this alone against the Raiders.
And they just added Nuke.
They just added Nuke Hopkins. I knew this before Nuke. I was going to go with this. The other part is they made fun of Patrick Mahomes this offseason. Don't forget. Remember, they made fun of him. The Raiders did. This is the Kermit the Frog revenge game coming up here.
Right.
So, Andy Reid, like remember that formation that they busted out last week where Carson Wentz and Mahomes, everybody's in a 3-point stance and everything? They're setting that up for this week. They're setting that up so Mahomes can throw the ball out of that formation this week. So they're going to have something special for the Raiders. So I'm going all positive this week. Rome Odunze, more than 31.5 receiving yards. Sam Darnold, more than 238.5 passing yards. And Patrick Mahomes, more than 226.5 passing yards.
Yeah.
So going to be positive here. My PrizePicks lineup. We're going to get back to it this week after a rough week last week.
I think I like those. Definitely Mahomes against the Raiders, I think makes a ton of sense. Odunze, I think, yeah, you're right. Like, that's such a low figure for him to hit against a bad defense. And then Darnold, the Rams passing defense definitely has some holes to it. So I could easily imagine that as well.
I think that's going to be a good game, by the way. The Vikings are testing that after you play the Lions, you're beat up and you struggle theory because they got to do it on a short week.
Right.
And it's a road game. I think it's going to be more competitive throw the records out the window, as they say.
Throw them out.
Just throw them out. So I think it's going to be a competitive Vikings-Rams game. So that's my lineup for the week. You can download the PrizePicks app today. Use the code CheckTheMic. You get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even have to win to get the $50. So join it today. Check the mic, $50 instantly when you play $5. Is that it for us today? Other than the touch on the news for the Browns?
What news do we got?
The final news piece of the day. Browns coach Kevin Stefanski announces that Jameis Winston will start, and they'll see how DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson's finger is in practice. Grip and functionality have been issues for what would generally be called a jammed finger on his throwing hand per rap sheet.
Okay, so
Jameis officially named the starter for this week against Baltimore.
Due to DTR having a hurt hand.
I mean, it should be because Jameis is awesome.
Well, better than DTR anyway.
I believe it was Kurt Warner tweeting through it the other day. He's like, I firmly believe Jameis Winston has been one of the top 32 QBs in the world over the last few years. And I would agree with that. I don't disagree with that at all.
Kurt was having a weekend on Twitter. He was also going off on one about explain to me like I'm 3 why you go for the 2 points when you're down scoring, blah, blah, blah.
I have empathy for that because I've been that person before. I didn't get it.
Yeah,
I didn't get it until I just got the explanation. Now, as soon as I got the explanation, so this is, why do you go for 2 when you need an 8 and a 7 or whatever?
Yeah.
Why do you go for 2 first instead of second? It is, I have empathy for coming out of the brain space. You're just so used to this brain space of get the 7 and then you just get the 2 later. Like, go for 2 later, right? You just, the brain space of like, what's the math to tie to get to overtime? That's where you have to come out of that a little bit to understand why you go for 2 first. So I have empathy for Kurt and others that question that.
I have no problem with questioning it. I think the problem is he then dug his heels in, and I think his communication style or his questioning, his argument style is to sort of still act like he doesn't understand what he understands. He just disagrees. Because I think there is, like, at this point, there's not a tremendous excuse anymore for not understanding why it happens. It's out there enough, right? And people have, like, if you ask the question, a lot of people are willing to tell you quite easily and quite simply why it happens.
Yes.
Then I think you can still construct an argument against it.
You can.
But, like, we can't anymore be acting like it's crazy, right? Like, it's clearly, it's obvious and there's a real explanation and it's pretty simple because ultimately you're going to need the extra score. And if you don't get the 2-point conversion, that is, and if you don't get it, you want to know you didn't get it so you can do something about it rather than on the last play of the game when if you don't get it, you're dead.
You literally lose if you don't get it with no time left.
Now, you're probably still screwed.
You lose 100% of the time.
Yes.
Right.
You're probably still screwed if you don't get it either way, right?
Yes.
But at least you have a chance of getting the extra score that you're then going to know you need. If it happens at the end of the game, you literally don't ever get that chance because the game's done, right? Now, the counter to that, I think, is valid, which is, and Kurt was saying this, like, is there not value to the belief that players have in them knowing that they only need that 1 fewer score because they haven't failed on the 2-point conversion yet? Like, you want to essentially extend the number of plays that your players are playing with real belief that they can win this game because that has a power in itself, right? And if that means that if and when you fail the 2-point conversion, the game is done, so be it. But the value of them believing up until that point is more powerful than whatever extra win percentage points you gain by knowing you need an extra score in the extra minutes you have left. I think that's a valid argument, and I don't know which way I would come down on that. But that's the conversation, right? You can't, like, I don't even understand what they're talking about. Like, I understand what the math people are saying, and that's very clear and obvious.
But you're given the
But that's the counter, right? So the conversation is, let's talk about that. What is the balance here? It's not what you're suggesting doesn't even make any sense because it clearly does.
I brought this up before. So, like, if you could, I'm not even the mathiest person around, but if I would encourage a coach to say, put a value on that. Right. And then let's run that into the model. I believe if my guys are only down 8 instead of 9, does that actually increase your chance of getting the 2-point conversion? Because I would say no. Just because you feel better doesn't mean you're going to convert more. the same way the first 3 plays on a goal line, if you get stopped on the first 3 plays on a goal line scoring attempt, it doesn't mean that you're not going to score on the 4th. We've seen that a million times as well. The other point that I brought up, I was on a game management panel this spring, and in front of coaches and answering questions and everything, and the coaches were like, we knew we had a good play call, right? So there was coaches, and they were in a big game. There was an offensive coordinator from a big game last year that we all knew, and he said we were going to go for 2, and we had a great play call. And I would be, if I was on a coaching staff or in a front office working game management, I would say, can you put a percentage on that? Like, what's a great play call? Right. Like, if a coach says we have a great play call, in their head they're like, this is going to work 75% of the time. If you could trust that, that matters in the whole thing. But can you actually trust that? Like, what does a great play call mean? Is it 51-49? What's a great play call? Like, if you knew that the play call was going to work, great. But I don't think we know that. I think that's kind of overconfidence. The same way I think it's overconfidence to say my players feeling better will make them play better on this one play and increase our chances of getting it.
The other thing working against the argument, the Warner argument of, the power of belief is a potent thing. If you then make it the extra score that you need, it also changes the way the opposing team plays it, because they now know, they need another score. We're going to play even more conservative, and that makes it easier for you to get those scores. So it's complicated is what I'm saying, right? I would say the mathematics probably lean you towards go for the 2. But I do think that there is merit in the other way, and it's close enough that neither stance is idiotic. Right?
I would but you know how you combat that? The very first day of training camp, or when the coach is talking to the team, at every turn, he's going to say, I'm going to make decisions that I think are going to give us a better chance to win. Yeah. You just ingrain that in your team. Like, you don't have to look at the scoreboard. You don't have to do the math. You don't have to count how many possessions. It's a 2-possession game. It's a 1-possession game. You don't have to do that. You do your job. And then my job is I promise you, I will make every decision to make us have a better chance to win, to give us a better chance to win. It might be fractions of percentage points, but that's going to add up over time. And all you do is ingrain that into your team. And then all the touchy-feely stuff they were talking about, the team's going to be upset, or they're going to be sad, they're going to feel bad if we're down 9 instead of 8. It's like, just grow up and play football. Just go play. And you trust that your coach is putting you in the best position to succeed. If the coach earns that trust along the way, right? That's why the Lions came to Dan Campbell's defense when they went for it and didn't get it on 4th down in the NFC Championship. They said, that's what we do. We already talked about this. We knew he was going to do it. That's who he is. We did it. We know. We're not second guessing him not kicking a field goal. We knew what he was going to do.
But I do think that a lot of those touchy-feely things, as you say, or mental state things, are quite powerful. And in order to believe that that is the way to go, even when the numbers say the opposite, you only have to believe that that's worth a pretty low percentage difference, right? Like, that moves the needle 4%. Might be the difference between thinking that that's worth going that way versus the other. So what frustrates me about all these conversations is each side acts like the other side is incomprehensibly dumb, right? Yeah. I cannot understand how you could possibly think the opposite. Whereas to me, each argument is pretty clear, and the only question is, how big a percentage do you think the power of belief in your players has in what is already a pretty unlikely situation, right? And like, if the difference is 2 versus 6%, it changes what the answer is to that question.
It is, yeah, because the go for 2 first or second, I mean, it really is very, very minimal gains.
It's like the Bucs attempting that comeback, right? At no point in the game during that comeback were they tremendously likely to win that game, right? So that's the kind of situation you're talking about. How much belief did anybody on that offense really have that they were going to win that game late on as they're trying to come back to get the onside? Maybe like the most belief they probably had was the very second they regained the first onside kick. Yeah. And they still needed like at least another one.
The one thing I would say about Kurt, and like Aikman used to do this years ago, he's much better about it now. You shouldn't, when you call games for a living, you shouldn't not know why this is happening.
The disdain that Joe Buck
Yeah.
in particular, and Aikman by extension, have for analytics as an umbrella term it's actually genuinely inexcusable for somebody with that position.
But that's what, like, the league is doing this.
Yes.
It's not like, just like 3 people are infiltrating the league.
That's
like,
what I'm
literally
saying.
every team in the league is doing
Right.
this. You need to understand why.
Not just understand it, but you need to accept that this is part of the game now, and this is actually, it's happening for a reason. All 32 NFL teams have analytics departments, have people working on these problems to give them better data. So when you're derisively sneering that this is what the analytics are telling them to do, that's why. It's making them win the game more. Stop being a jackass about it. This is just the way the game has gone since you were a dinosaur. Deal
And
with
to
it.
your point, you can disagree with it. You could say, here's why I disagree.
Right.
I also think
But you
it's
can only
weird.
do that when you understand it, which they don't.
I also think it's interesting that the play-by-play guy feels the need to ask the color guy, what would you do here? And I'm like, I'm different than most fans, of course. I don't care. I don't care what Tom Brady, Troy Aikman, Greg Olsen, I don't care what any of them would do here. But they always feel the need. What would you do here on 4th and 1? I hear this in college games all the time. And they're the college announcers, the second and third string college announcers, they're even less educated about this. It's they're going for it in their own 40. I would definitely punt it and trust my defense. They're even worse about understanding this. So I would just say color analysts at the NFL game right now should understand the why. And then you can say, well, here's why I disagree. Here's what they're thinking. They're thinking, I want to keep possession. I can't score if I don't have the ball. I'm going to convert this 4th and 1 65% of the time. Therefore, it doesn't matter if it's at my own 35. They should know that information before they say, I would just punt because that's what everybody's always done.
This is my initial point. I think at this point, it's too big a part of the game. Everybody should understand the arguments, right? Even if you want to then disagree, there is an argument you can construct to go against the data in basically all of these situations. But you can only do that if you understand what you're talking about.
That's a good point.
And at this point, it's been talked about, it's been played out in case studies often enough that you should understand the thing, right? And again, the second Kurt Warner posted that, 58 people explained it to him pretty simply in a variety of different ways, all of which are quite understandable.
Yes.
To then still be acting like it's dumb, it's not dumb. You might disagree with it. You might have a different take. It's not stupid. It's close. So, the end.
I had the same conversation with another prominent analyst, but we did it in the DMs last year because a lot of times it does come across combative when it's in public like that,
Right.
Didn't want to do that. I was like, let's take it to the DMs and I'll explain why the going for 2 makes sense. Because somebody explained it to me. I told you, I used to think that.
Yeah.
And somebody explained it to me. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. There's a few things I didn't believe
Right.
until I got the explanation, and then it made more sense to me.
And
then I believed it.
the down 9 one is even less intuitive than the down 8 one.
Yeah.
Because you're literally creating an extra possession, not just when you go for 2 or not to win
Right.
the game. You're actually creating an extra possession if you don't get it.
Right.
But it's still the right call.
Yes.
Mathematically.
So that wasn't planned, but that was good. That could be its own little one-off discussion if anyone's interested. We have anything else here today?
Do we want to read this mailbag message? It's relatively short.
Yeah, go for it.
This is from an Atlanta sports fan. Due to the physical limitations of players, the NFL playoffs are a seeded single elimination bracket. As a nerdy fan of bracketology, the made-up study of tournament formats, how much does NFL history change if the playoffs are, for example, a best of 3? Perhaps something like 1 home, 1 away, 1 neutral site game if necessary. Do impactful playoff games have different victors? Are Super Bowl results flipped? Maybe a certain team from New Jersey doesn't ruin the greatest sports season of a team since the 72 Dolphins. Just food for thought.
Okay, so I've never thought about this.
Really? You've never thought about this?
I never thought of let's say the Super Bowl's 2 out of 3.
Right.
Never.
It's never crossed your mind.
Crossed my mind maybe, but I never put serious thought into it.
Okay.
I think that would be awesome for
my
football.
automatic assumption is that every single massive underdog no longer wins. The Giants being the most obvious example. I don't know if
But then so you'd have the Patriots.
for example,
the Patriots were the biggest underdogs when they beat the Rams. It was
Right.
a 14-point spread. And then the Giants became the biggest underdogs when they beat the Patriots. You might flip both of those two.
Actually, what I think happens is all of those teams never even make it. The Giants don't make a Super Bowl to knock out the Patriots.
Well, not every series is 2 out of 3.
No, that's what he's saying. The playoff series.
I mean, that's just impossible. I would.
Well, of course, it's impossible. The whole thing is impossible.
But like a 2 out of 3 Super Bowl is not impossible.
I mean, it kind of is.
It's not going to happen. But I'm just saying, like, I would work under that premise. Let's say all the same teams go to the Super Bowl, and then you get 2 out of 3, and now you're talking like Belichick's Patriots against the greatest show on turf, and great defensive performance, and this and that. They shut them down against Kurt Warner. What if they had to do it one more time, and then what's the counterpunch? So now you're talking about the game-to-game strategy would be incredible. And what's happened in the NBA, in NBA analytics, is teams, they've realized that you want to construct teams for the playoffs that are different than teams for the regular season. I don't think you have that in football. Like, what works in the regular season actually does work in the postseason, despite what people say. Run the ball, stop the run, whatever. Like, the best teams are generally have the best opportunity to win. But if you had to win 2 out of 3, you might have to construct your team differently in order to be able to do that, to actually win the Super Bowl.
So, and maybe this is just, it does feel like New England is the interesting case study in most of those Super Bowls that you would want to see 2 more times. Like, what would happen? Like, okay, and let's assume
the
that
Nick Foles Eagles.
So let's assume that the actual result is also the first game of the 3, right? We don't just do it again 3 times. We actually start with the record that is, right? So the Patriots upsetting the greatest show on turf Rams are 1-0. Now they have to do it. At least they've got 2 more shots to do it one more time.
Yes.
Can they get another win against that Rams team?
I think that'd be tough.
The Giants in 2007 have upset New England. Can they do it another time?
So it's weird because the fact that what happened in 2007 happened in similar fashion in 2011 with the Giants and their defense and Eli making some big plays. The fact that it happened 4 years later almost feels like a data point that's relevant. Like, maybe they could have replicated it in 2007. Maybe they could have replicated it in 2011. They had good success against the Patriots.
Sure. The Bucks stomping the crap out of John Gruden's old offense in the Raiders. If the Raiders get 2 more games at it, do they change things and actually fix it?
Do they change their signals in the next week?
What else would be interesting?
A 3-week Super Bowl. And it's all, what would that, it would all be in the...
Better one. The first New England-Philadelphia game. Terrell Owens coming back from his ankle injury, already had like whatever it was, 100-plus yards.
Gets healthy.
Now he's a week healthier, and a week healthier after that. Can the Patriots knock off the Eagles another time?
That'd be something.
With a healthier Terrell Owens.
I think they were a better team. They were a better team back then.
What else we got?
Patriots 28-3 comeback against the Falcons.
Sure.
And then how does that affect things going forward?
Right. Yeah, that would be an interesting one to run back.
And then the Nick Foles Eagles. Like Nick Foles, the story of the 2017 Eagles was Nick Foles having one of the best back-to-back playoff performances, not 3 in a row because he wasn't great against
2 of the most improbable games that have ever happened.
2, NFC Championship and the Super Bowl. Could they do that again against New England? Tom Brady threw for over 500 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks, and lost in that Eagles Super Bowl. Could they come back and beat the Eagles twice? Or would Nick Foles steal one more to confirm the Super Bowl?
The first of John Elway's Super Bowls, Denver, Green Bay, do they get over that? Do they beat Brett Favre's Packers 2 times in that series? That was close. What else we got?
What if the Bills were forced to play the Cowboys again?
If they play their 4 Super Bowls 3 times
they get
each,
one of
them they've got to win, surely.
Do they come back and win 2 in a row at some point?
Wide right surely has to turn into a Super Bowl win if they get 2 more shots at it in each occasion.
And what if they just did 3 straight weeks in the same location?
So there we go. That's
Super Bowl.
That's our outcome. That's how we've rewritten
history. The Bills
history.
have won a Super Bowl.
If every Super Bowl was a best of 3, Buffalo has one.
The Bills beat Washington
and
twice
Minnesota
in a row
probably has
in
one.
91, or the Bills beat the Giants twice in a row in 1990 with Jeff Hostetler.
The 2 cursed teams, Minnesota and Buffalo, probably each have a Super Bowl. It's a best of 3 series.
And New England has somewhere between 5 and 10. Who knows which way it goes? I like it. That's fun. It's a fun theory. Now I'm actually intrigued by if just the Super Bowl was 2 out of 3, because the football strategy in that.
There's that famous
because we hear about this game plan and this.
It's really hard to beat a team, 3 times. Now, you don't have to beat them 3 times. You have to do 2 out of 3. But it's hard to when you're talking about 2 of the best teams in the league. It's hard to do that consecutively.
That would be fun, though. Walt's got all sorts of answers. He's going back to the 70s, of course.
It does make it really interesting, though, when the game went in such a clear way. Like, so Oakland, Tampa Bay, where you're like, Tampa, you saw how that unfolded. There's a very clear thing to fix for next week, right? Like, those are the ones where it becomes really interesting to me.
We see that in the regular season all the time. Team gets blown out, then they play competitively.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, there would.
So those are the ones
would completely change.
Those are the ones that are really interesting to me, where there's like a clear thing that one team ended up, like on a one-game sample size, one team showed up with something that really caused problems. Can the other team counter that the following week?
I like it. That's a good email. We also had somebody who went through, you merely posed a question the other day. I wonder what all those NFC games were from Lamar Jackson, the 23-1 record, and appreciate him going through and listing all the signature wins there.
Yeah. I mean, he answered them. He sort of went through year by year what NFC teams Lamar Jackson had played and which were the sort of signature big wins.
Won't mention his name because he did it at work. And chances are his boss listens. Chances are.
Sure.
Right.
Along with the other millions.
Yes, exactly. All right. Is that it for us today?
Yep.
You guys can email us as well. Check the mic at the33rdteam.com. Send us more emails. Love the Discord channel, another place to keep in touch.
And if the Arizona Cardinals are looking for a donated ACL for the Barbarian, Steve's got at least one he's not using.
I think if you combine my two ACLs, they'll work.
I feel like your knee issues are elsewhere. The ligaments are fine.
It's
everything else.
Strong ligaments. Yeah. Everything else falling apart.
So look, it's already on the way out. You might as well sacrifice your ACL to the Barbarian.
I would do it. I'll give up an ACL for the Barbarian, get him back out there. That's what the band's for the Barbarian. We'll be back again tomorrow previewing all of the Week 8 action. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. See you again tomorrow with more. Check the mic.